Well, Peter, let's move back to the topic of strategy for a minute. As I mentioned, our industry over the last 40 years has gone through a fundamental metamorphosis relative to size, scale, public, all the things that we know all too well today. As you look at the industry going forward, what are the major strategic issues that you think we as an industry have to address?
Well, in the near term, you've got to deal with how do we get vaccinated? What does all that mean? And that's all pretty obvious and has been spoken about by me. If you haven't seen it, go to Linneman Associates. There's a bunch of webinars I've given on that. So I think you're asking more broadly, what do you deal with?
Right.
I think more broadly, you're dealing with the real estate markets get ever more efficient, for lack of a better phrase. What that means is that you have to be sure that your niche is protected. And the only reason I say that is, as you know, if you go back 35 years ago, the market was very inefficient. And you could do well simply because nobody else was challenging you in some ways. That's less true. Now, not totally untrue, but less true. So I think increased efficiency will continue to be. I think increased professionalization. And again, we're both old enough to remember what the industry was like 35, 40 years ago, where things like succession, things like strategy, nobody cared about, right? Mm-hmm. Then if you said truly strategic, I think each sector has its own challenges. For example, retail, will everything really be online? I don't think so. What won't be online? How do we fill in for what disappears? How does the aging of the baby boomer fit into repositioning retail? Because historically, the industry has ignored older consumers, but we now have a population of older consumers who are the wealthiest, highest income consumers in history, and they got time and money unlike ever before. How do you adjust to that? I think on multifamily, the question is, as you get more lifestyle renters, what do they really want? Because as you know, again, 35 years ago, this was largely an industry of necessity renters. Mm-hmm. Increasingly, it kind of evolved into lifestyle, or at least some lifestyle renters. And we're still guessing around what they want, right? We haven't really figured out what they want. You put in a little longer swimming pool, right? And say, okay, that's what they want. And I think that's still early stages of figuring out that. Office has got a big challenge facing it. I think people come back to the office. I jokingly said, you want proof they'll come back to the office for better, for worse, but not for lunch and certainly not every day. They're going to go back to the office. But how do you organize those workers? How do you get them in? Do the small floor usage, space usage per worker, how does that evolve out? How do you work your way through? Do leases need to get shorter? But if they get shorter, will tenants pay the premium associated with that greater risk? So I think each sector has. What I would say, Bill, is that unlike when I began in the business, most of the leaders, there were a handful who thought about these types of issues in their own sector. Not many, right? Most of them were, can I get the tax advantages? How much can I tell the tax advantages for, and how much can I borrow? And
right.
Can I get that was strategy. Strategy was, do I have a friendly banker who will write 110% loan? That is, I would get a loan of 110 for 100 in cost. Can I sell the tax credits? And if so, for how much? Because that was money found. And the third is, how soon can I do it again? That was strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting, Peter, too, I think to your point, is, for the first 9 months of the pandemic, everybody was focused on the care and feeding of their people. I mean, what I've heard, and I don't know what you've heard, is that, and then people started talking about culture and how much culture was being negatively impacted by the fact that everybody was remote. And I think that's become increasingly of concern. That and business execution, just executing the business as
Absolutely.
everybody gets busier again. And I don't know if you've seen that in the conversations you've had.
Absolutely, absolutely. Everybody puts on a brave face. Everybody puts on a brave face saying we're doing quite well because what's the alternative, right? We're doing quite well. Having said that, come on, it would be interesting when we get to people like Chris Nassetta, who's on our list, or Sam Zell, or John Gray, or others, which is, okay, you've been able to manage the firm through this. Could you have built the firm remotely? And my
Right.
guess is no. How would you integrate all these people? How would you execute? I'm not trying to say I know that's what they're going to say. I think we're going to hear that a bit as we talk about the near-term challenges of leadership with those people and the longer term.